Good afternoon. Welcome to this third session on the history of Auroville between 1968 and 1973. In the first two sessions, we interviewed people who were present at the inauguration ceremony and people who lived in the early communities of Promise, Forecomers, and Peace. In 1969, many young people started to come to Auroville. Most of them came from Western Europe and the United States. A lot of the early comers lived in communities around Peace, that is at the pump house, which was later called Arindam, Sincerity, Fidelity, which was later renamed Shanti. Also, Narad and Annie started the Matra Mandir nursery with Amrit, who still works there. Rod began school for Tamil children in Center Field, and Shama and Frederick and their children moved to a temporary house at Orison's home. Didn't turn out to be very temporary because it's still there. But the most spectacular event of 1969 was the arrival of a caravan from Paris. On August the 15th, at 0 hours, 15 adults and 1 child left Paris to travel overland to Auroville. It took them 6 weeks because they had an accident on the way. Shortly after they arrived, a new Aurovillian, Philor, was born to one of the couples on the caravan. In preparation for the arrival of these people who had already committed themselves to an experiment in collective living, several huts were built and a community kitchen near the Tamil village of Kulapalayam. Now, although these two communities were separated by culture, tradition, language, education, and wealth, still it was part of the experiment of Auroville in human unity that people who were vastly different from each other would live close together. Today, we will be interviewing some people who were present, who traveled from Paris on the caravan, plus others who were already here. Maybe we shall be, but I'm not sure if he's coming, we shall be talking to Canon, an early Aurovillian from Kulapalayam, about his impression of the newcomers. So today we will speak to Francois and Jean-Claude, who came on the caravan, and Christophe, who was already here when the caravan arrived, and Dorothy, who came a little later. Sally Champ from California in the United States will be the interviewer. Thank you.
Okay, Francois, you were on that caravan that left Paris. I hear a lot about the caravan, but I don't know what it looked like. Were there automobiles? Were there vans? What was your mode of transportation?
Well, actually, there were old second-hand French cars. I think there were two vans, 2 old Citroën vans and 2 old Peugeot. And there was also a newer car which was driven by Papa Chenet. Remember Papa Chenet? And we worked in Paris in a garage for about 2 months. Although I was very young, so I'm afraid I didn't really participate very much. And but still, the cars were not such good condition because they kept breaking down all the way from Paris to Auroville. So actually, they were quite old cars, and I think they're all gone. Some of them burned down when there was that fire in Aspiration, and don't know what happened to them.
But the original vehicles, did they all make it here, or did you have to replace them along the way?
No, they all made it here, except the vans broke down. I think after Pakistan they broke down, so they had to be towed. Maybe even before Pakistan. So the 2 vans had to be towed by the 2 Peugeots from maybe Pakistan or Afghanistan onwards. So we actually reached Auroville towing these 2 vans, which were out of order.
I'm trying to imagine what that looked like, towing one car behind another through Pakistan. It must have been quite a sight to see this caravan of vehicles full of French people heading across this part of Asia. It seems kind of dramatic. Was it a dramatic occurrence?
Well, actually, the whole caravan was quite dramatic. We had accidents and we had a lot of fights. People were very different. They had different aspirations, they had different commitments to come here, and we were all very young. Except maybe for people who had already come here and who knew about Sherman and the mother, like Vincenzo, and there was Stephen, also an Australian, who's not here anymore. And there was Alain Molly and Eliane, so they knew a little bit about Auroville and the mother. The rest, we just had a faint idea of why we were coming. So not only were the cars in a rather bad state, but we were all very, very motley. We were not united. I can't say that, it was a very harmonious and very beautiful experience.
So why did you come to Auroville? What was your motivation, or how did you even find out about it, and what was interesting about it for you?
Well, personally, it was an accident, kind of, if you can call it this. I had my best friend. His father was the last French governor of Pondicherry. His name was Jean-Marie, and his father's name was François Baron. And I had been knowing him, since my early childhood, because my parents and his parents knew each other from, before I was born even. So I had heard about Pondicherry, I had heard about Auroville, I heard about the mother in Chomino, though I was never interested. And when I finished my studies, he came back from Pondicherry, told me there's a caravan going to Auroville, why don't you go? And I thought, maybe I can go around the world and, utilize this caravan, go up to India, then from India go into Japan, from Japan to America, and then come back to Paris. So I was only 19, and at this time I think you had to be 21 to be an adult. So I had to get my parents' permission and got the papers, and so I took this caravan without knowing about the Auroville, without knowing about the mother, Chormindo, not being interested actually. I mean, outwardly I didn't have the aspiration. I just felt that I wanted to get out of the life I had in France, and I had never been very happy there. And very dimly and consciously I felt that this is what I had to do and go out in the world, and the caravan just happened to be there, and I just took the caravan by chance. But then of course, as the caravan developed, as we progressed on the road from Paris to Auroville, there were a lot of trouble, a lot of fights, and but then I started reading Chorbindo and the mother, and I read particularly Saad-Prem's L'Aventure de la Conscience, which had just come out. And by the time I reached Delhi, I knew that this was it. This is where I wanted to stay all my life. So I was 19. I just turned 19 at that time, and I started without knowing where I was going, and by the time I reached Auroville, I knew I was going to stay there for all my life. This was my thing. So in a way, it was very intense, but very difficult experience.
What you said there were fights and problems on the caravan during the trip. What kind of problems did you encounter at that time?
Well, people were very different. You had, if you want to simplify, you had the people who were materialistic and people who were spiritualists. On one hand, you had people like Alain Monnier and and Eliane, who had a kind of so-called spiritual approach to Auroville. They read the mother, they read the Chormindo, and you had other people like Vincenzo. They were more materialistic. For them, it was more working and doing, and so there was a conflict between these people. And I was very young, so I was caught in between because I was neither one nor the other, and I didn't know about Auroville. I hadn't read Chorbindo. I didn't know about India, and I was not also very, carried by materialistic things or vital things. So one didn't feel very comfortable because there was a conflict between these people, and then you were caught in between, and you didn't know what was happening, and you didn't understand what was the. So there were a lot of conflict, and on top of that, it was difficult because the cars were not in good condition. We didn't have so much money. There were the accidents. We got stuck in a place called Erzurum, which is the border of Iran and of Turkey and Iran, and it was terrible because we were stuck there for a week, and it was middle of nowhere. People were hostile, and we stayed in the place which was very hot in the day and very cold at night. We were attacked at night also. We had to protect our women, so it was kind of baffling. But I remember that for me the turning point was Istanbul. No? Istanbul was like the East. No? Suddenly, after 20 years in Europe, you come there and you see Istanbul. No? It was like the gate of the East. Suddenly you felt a different world, different vibration, different possibilities. So for me, that was a great turning point. No? And the second turning point was in Delhi. When we reached Delhi, there was Roger and I think Navajata and Udar. I'm not sure, but I think Udar was there waiting for us in Delhi, and they took us to the Shromido Ashram in Delhi, which at that time looked like in the countryside. In my memory, it was, there were fields and it was outside. Now it's right in the middle of Delhi, and there are buildings and traffic and pollution. That time it looked like the countryside. So we reached this place and we were very tired, and it had been a tough trip. And that's my personal experience. I remember that I had this book of Sat Prem, The Adventure of Consciousness, and I climbed on the roof of one of the vans, and there was a setting sun, in India, and it was so peaceful, and people were coming back from the fields with their plows and their bullocks, And I read a few pages of that book, and it was like, suddenly I felt, that this was it, and I had reached my place. So I guess this was the great turning point of that trip. And after that, it was easier. After Delhi, then from Delhi to Agra, then we saw the Taj Mahal, then we went to down south, reached Hyderabad, Bangalore, and I remember we reached Auroville one early morning. We landed in Promise, I think it was Promise. There's a photo actually of all of us landing in Promise, and I'm hiding behind Krishna, which was my friend and protector during that caravan. His name then was Zali. And then we went to Purna's restaurant on the beach, which was already called to Skifu, and then we had lunch there. And in the evening, we sat under the banyan tree in Aspiration. The banyan tree is gone now. And Roger was there, and he gave us Mother's first message. And I think the first message was, there should be no servants in Auroville. That's what I remember, the first message. So that was my first day in Aspiration.
Francois, I see here, you're sitting here shaking your head yes in agreement about the feelings of the people when they first arrived. You were young, maybe a little naive. What was it like for you when you first got here?
No, it's wonderful to remember, and when Christophe speaks, my heart, goes out, because it's true, we had the sense of the miracle. Everything was possible. We were so young. We still are. It's still there in us, but we were so young, and there was nothing. There was nothing to be seen, nothing to believe in, but everything was. We believed, we felt, everything was there, and we had this faith and this. And actually, it's an anecdote. It's funny, but Christophe used to be my teacher. When I was a kid, when I was not a kid, I was maybe 16. He was my Latin teacher in school. And I met him again in Paris. We were having this shot. At that time, we had to have a lot of shots before coming for it. Tetanus and so I met him in the Institut Pasteur in Paris, and I said, oh, but this is my Latin teacher.
I didn't know Latin, I must tell you. I was teaching Latin without knowing much about that. The little I knew.
And what Jean-Claude was saying also, it's true that, we were young during the caravan, and we wanted to stop and look, and to, spend 4 days in Istanbul, and Afghanistan was fascinating also. It was such a new world for us. But people who had already, Vincenzo had done the road, I think, already 2-3 times, maybe 2 times. So he was pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing the cars and pushing us, and ultimately the cars broke, and we didn't break, but I nearly left at some point. I had a fight with Vincenzo and in Istanbul, and I thought, I'll stay in Istanbul. It was such a wonderful place, and but somehow I stayed in the caravan and I reached here. But I think maybe another time, but this caravan deserves, more. There are so many things to be said about this caravan. When we left, we left Paris on 15th of August, as you said, at 0 hours. And Paris in August is totally empty at that time, Everybody leaves Paris, So it was like a feeling of, it was feeling something being, not dead, but something, it was like living a world, living an old world, Suddenly I was 19 and I just turned 19 and I didn't know anything about India, but it was like suddenly I understood I was leaving something behind me forever, And as Christophe said also, when you reach there, we brought our Frenchness, and our, we were very rough. I think, I don't know what Jean-Claude would say, but we were all very rough, I remember when Roger saw us the first time, and his look was like, oh, how are we going to make Auroville with these people, These 15 people who had just arrived from France, and they had, for all the wrong reasons, I guess, Roger never recovered after that. And what Christophe says, and I felt the same thing, I mean, that what I had left behind me, I was still finding there in aspiration in the first few months. So, there was a lot of energy but lots of fights also, and lots of, so I felt, and I wrote to the mother, I said, Mother, this is what I have left behind, and I would like something different. So I asked her to go to the ashram. And she said no at first, and finally she said yes. So I only stayed actually 8 months in aspiration. Then I went to Golconde and I spent 4 months in Golconde. I'm going too fast maybe,
Continue.
I spent 4 months, and that was the second turning point of my life, is that these 4 months in Golconde was like a purification, reading Charbonneau, reading the mother, going to the ashram, meditating, trying to meditate. And then the mother put me in the garden, which was outside Pondicherry. So actually I only stayed 7 months in Auroville, and there are people who can talk better than me about these early months. But the caravan was something very interesting, and I think it deserves, that more people talk about it. Krishna should come, because he was also quite a character, still quite a character. And there was Sébastien also, who used to have him, he used to ask people to time himself on the van, on top of the van, so he would ask someone to time on top of the van in the night, and he would look at the stars and traveling, in this wilderness in the middle of nowhere, and he would just look at the stars. So there were a lot of characters in this caravan. Some of them have disappeared. I don't know what happened to them. So each one maybe deserves a story or remembrance. But this feeling has to come back to Auroville, of that miracle. Everything was possible, and when the mother left, of course there were different explanations, and each one has got his own faith, but something went away, because we all believed that everything was possible, that in spite of ourselves, in spite of. So this is what we have to retrieve in Auroville, our youth.
Did the mother explain to you why she wanted you to stay those first several months in Auroville?
Well, actually, as I told you, it's I came by chance here. I was not interested in Auroville. I was not interested in the caravan. Actually, I had a lot of conflict with people in the caravan. Maybe not with Jean-Claude, but with Vincenzo, because they felt I was a stranger. I was not connected. I used to smoke a little bit. Hashish that one could buy so easily in this caravan, and I was not connected, so there was a lot of conflict between me and Vincenzo, and luckily Krishna was there to protect me. So when I came here, my commitment was not towards Auroville, and after I met the mother, I just asked her that I would like to leave Auroville and go to the ashram, because this is where I felt my first love was for India. When I reached India, this is when I felt that I'd reached home, and I felt that Auroville was too westernized at that time. Even now, when I came back from the ashram, I still feel the same thing. That this harshness of the Westerners, this that psychic sweetness which Indians have sometimes. You know? Though sometimes it can be, you know, sugary, but that's missing in Auroville. So when I was 19, I felt this very strongly. That, you know, this is what I have left behind. This is not. So that's why I asked her to come to the ashram and to be with Indians. So actually, I spent my next 8 years with only Indians. I had no Western friends, and I kind of soaked myself with that India of the ashram, which of course is different from another India, which is outside in the whole of India.
You've said something about your initial contact with the mother. Can you tell us a little bit more? You know, under what circumstances did you see her, and what kind of things did you talk about, and how did you feel during these talks or after the talks?
I didn't see her immediately because I felt I was not ready. So I think we arrived here on the 30th of September. So I probably saw her in November. And you know, sometimes the mother said that people, when they come to see her, they're always trying to look at their best, you know. And she said, why don't they see me as they are, you know, show themselves as they are. So the first time I wasn't really ready. I was not self-conscious, and I guess I came to her in a simple manner without. So I like all of us here, I can't really describe. It's only I can say that, you know, her eyes, you know, if one should remember something from the mother, it was her eyes. You know, it was like, you know, it was like the magnet that drew you. It was her eyes. And that first time I just froze. I cannot describe what happened. I don't even remember really. But I just froze, and I didn't know where I was. So I think that Purna, who I came to see her with Purna, they had to take me and, you know, guide me down because I was so frozen. I mean, I was just, something in me was just caught and seized, you know, I was like seized. That was my first. Of course, after that, I met her again quite a few times, but I guess I was never as natural, as simple as I was the first time, you know. Then every time one expects something or wants something, you know, or one always wants to take something, so one loses something, certainly. So we were so fortunate to see the mother. I mean, I don't know in Auroville how many people here have seen the mother, but that makes us come back to my first thing, you know, the problem of our, where we fit instruments. I mean, how come, you know, she chose that Caravan, there were 15 people, and we looked so, you know, such unfit instruments, you know, when Roger saw us, he really thought.
Francois, did she give you any practical advice?
No, I can't say that. No, it was quite late, 69, 70. We were privileged, but we didn't have the privilege like earlier, you know, like people in the ashram. We used to meet her every day and for a long time. Personally, at least, you know, I used to meet her for my birthday and maybe 2-3 times a year. Otherwise, but it was just holding hands and looking in her eyes, and maybe she'll say a few words or she'll give you a mantra if you ask her. Letters, yes, I had some letters and I had some advice, but I can't really say that I, you know, talked to the mother long times and, you know, for a long time, and long conversations. And I didn't really participate in the aspiration talks. I already had gone, or I think I had already gone, left Auroville. Again, I know I want to come back to this. We were so privileged. I mean, we had the immense privilege of meeting the mother, and it is a discrepancy, you know, the gap between what we expected at that time and what is today. That's a bit frightening. Although the faith is there, and you know, we have the faith in the hour of God. We have the faith that all is going to be done. All I know it's going to be done, but still there is a gap. You know, there's an unexplained gap. There is a, you know, what should have been is not there. You know, whether we were not fit, whether it was because we were not fit instruments. This is my strongest feeling. Whether it's because something happened in between, or because she left us. For me, this is what's most sad. I mean, but and this is missing in Auroville today. I think that enthusiasm, that freshness, that belief that everything is possible. It'll come back. It certainly is a cycle. There are cycles of, more individualistic inner research and less collective emphasis. But talking about these times, there's a kind of sadness that comes, whatever the reason.
When I came here a year ago, I came without any knowledge of Auroville, but yet I had a feeling that there was something going on here that was very unusual. I didn't understand it, but I felt there was, on an intuitive level, I felt that there was a big change that was about to occur, and I couldn't describe it because I didn't have any information about it. But I still feel this 1 year afterwards, after my first arrival. And I'm wondering if you all have a similar feeling. Do you feel the same way? I feel, although there are many, many problems here now, that there is about to be a big change.
Well, I feel Auroville is very much alive. I mean, there's no question of Auroville not happening. The fact that, there's such a strong presence in the chamber, in spite of the fighting around it, in spite, of the mother not being here physically, you can say in the Samadhi, the mother and two widows, they're there. They've lived there for 50 years, that their bodies are there, But then in the matrimony, it's like a divine sanction, that presence is there, it came from nowhere, it is there. So that's a sign that Auroville is alive and it's going to happen. But still, between what we hoped in when we all came here and what is there now, there's a gap. I mean, one can't deny it, There is somewhere we have failed somewhere. So the sadness can come from there. That doesn't mean that Auroville is not going to happen. Auroville is going to happen.
But you must be optimistic. You're still here.
But if you go out of Auroville, I mean, as long as you're in India, you still feel protected. But when you go to the West and you see what's happening there, Auroville is still an island of hope in the world. I think the very fact that Auroville is still alive, the only virtue of Auroville is that people are still there attempting. Nothing has been really. You can't say that Auroville has succeeded in creating anything except the green base of Auroville, the physical base of Auroville, all these trees and the greenery. But you can't show anything of Auroville that we have created. We have not achieved anything in terms of power, in terms of money. We have not solved any of these major, problems which have plagued the world for 10,000 years. But we're still there, and people are still coming. So that's the hope for the world, I think, because this place exists.
But you must be optimistic. You're still here.
But if you go out of Auroville, I mean, as long as you're in India, you still feel protected. But when you go to the West and you see what's happening there, Auroville is still an island of hope in the world. I think the very fact that Auroville is still alive, the only virtue of Auroville is that people are still there attempting. Nothing has been really. You can't say that Auroville has succeeded in creating anything except the green base of Auroville, the physical base of Auroville, all these trees and the greenery. But you can't show anything of Auroville that we have created. We have not achieved anything in terms of power, in terms of money. We have not solved any of these major, problems which have plagued the world for 10,000 years. But we're still there, and people are still coming. So that's the hope for the world, I think, because this place exists. Otherwise. Auroville was so bare, you could see the sea from anywhere, Matrimonial from here, everywhere. There were only palm trees, You could see the sea, and everything was red, Everything was red. It was like snow, In the morning sun or evening sun, how snow, is gleaming, It's scintillating, It was the same thing, It was so red, and and there was nothing, no trees, you could see the sea everywhere, and there was no roads, of course, So one had to cross the village, Kulapalayam, because there was no road from the beach, we built it later in aspiration. So one had to come through Jipmer and then cross the village, and I remember it was a shock, it was like two different worlds, our world and the village, there was so much gap, which I feel is still here now, The only way we have bridged a little bit the gap is by taking some of the children in our school and bringing them back with our children, The first generation, the generation which was brought up with Alain Monnier and Eliane, they're the only ones who really are bridging the gap, Ratnam and Rama. But after that, Auroville didn't really try, I very strongly feel that there's a tremendous gap between Auroville and the village, and that it's going to be a major problem because we have so many servants. And however good relationship we have with them, however well we pay them, they're still servants, and it's growing and growing, and we have more workers, and building more houses and more units, And there is no children, which are brought up. There should be, lots of religion they have to be brought up right from the kindergarten. Otherwise, they don't speak like us. They cannot be on par with the other Western children. And it's not done in Auroville. This is one of the very sad things in Auroville. It's not done, and this gap is growing, and it's going to be a major problem. The next generation is going to suffer from this. That karma that we have created, 25 years of ignorance and of unwillingness. Because every time we tried too late. So the teachers said and the parents said no, but it's bringing down the level of our kids. And now what's happened? All the kids are going to Codecan school or the Lycée Français. This is something very wrong. And so that talking about Kulapalayam, maybe now there are shops, but the gap between the village and Auroville is as great as when nearly as great. They understand us better now, of course, but there's not been much progress, certainly. It's a major problem. The village is one thing, but India, nobody knows anything about India in Auroville. It's not people's fault because it's like an island. There's so many Westerners, and so there's a cut between India and Auroville. And personally, I've been fortunate because I've been going out in India quite often, and it's changed my life, because the Auroville needs tremendous influence from India. Auroville needs to be spiritualized. There's, to my feeling, it sounds a bit, arrogant to say that, but Auroville needs to be spiritualized. It needs India's influence. It needs more techniques, meditation or pranayama, whatever, And there's also a gap between Auroville and India. Not necessarily as, the Indians in Auroville, they're not the best representative of India also, but a deeper India, of which, of course, Kulapalayam is part.
Why do you think that generally the youth are not attracted to the Auroville project? In India, why do you think they are not so? After all these years, that not so many young people even coming.
Well, the Ashram boys never came here, and the Ashram girls never came here, or very few came here, because they always, I think they always put off by the harshness of Westerners also, and they're also more used to, I think they're also scared because they don't have the, they don't have the
spirit of
pioneer,
also,
the spirit of pioneer.
Yeah,
they
also,
like
this
also
is
of being a pioneer, and they have to secure a life, maybe, I don't know what.
We have run out of tape.
Very good, we can do it now.
It's too bad because we're getting to another subject.
But we should do more about this caravan because there's so many more things to be said. It's interesting, this caravan, actually.
We have the different experience now.